There comes a time in every life when the smile you wear is just a mask hiding the pain someone else has placed in your soul. Maybe it was betrayal. Maybe it was rejection. Maybe it was the silence that spoke louder than 1,000 angry words. Whatever it was, it shook you. It changed you. And now you're sitting there wondering, why me? What did I do to deserve this? But I want you to hear me now. You didn't break. You bent. You didn't fall. You stumbled. But you're still standing. And what they did to you is not the definition of your worth. It's the beginning of your breakthrough. You don't fight fire with fire. You rise above it and walk through it without getting burned. Because when you're troubled by someone, it's not about them. It's about how you respond. So let's talk about what to do when someone troubles your peace, poisons your heart, or tests your strength. There's something about pain that makes you feel like the world has stopped spinning. Like the air has been taken out of your lungs and your soul is too tired to even cry. When someone hurts you, when they walk away, lie to you, disrespect you, or make you question your worth, you don't just feel sad. You feel stripped. You feel small. But here's the truth. Pain is not the end. It is the fire that either consumes you. You've got to decide, will I let this break me or build me? The greatest power you'll ever discover isn't in pretending to be okay. It's in standing in that brokenness, staring at your reflection and saying, I'm still here. Don't hide your hurt. Hold it. Face it. Because the first step to turning pain into power is being real about where it lives inside of you. Pain has a way of showing up uninvited. It barges in through the doors of your heart with muddy feet and leaves fingerprints on your peace. But listen. What hurts you doesn't have to define you. Your history is not your destiny. What they did to you, what you lost, what you suffered through, it's not who you are. It's a chapter, not your whole story. And you are the author. Yes, pain leaves a scar, but that scar is proof that you survived something that could have taken you out. Use it. Don't waste it. Dig deep into the ache and you'll find fuel. You'll find fire. Every tear you cried has a lesson inside it. You just have to reach in and pull that power out. Turn the betrayal into boundaries. Turn the heartbreak into healing. Let the pain teach you what peace really looks like. Let it shape the strength they never saw coming. You see, people think strength is about smiling when you're hurting. No. Real strength is in the transformation. When you take your pain and make it your platform, you become unstoppable. The world may never know what it cost you to stand up this morning, to smile through the chaos, to forgive when you had every right to rage. But you know what it took. And that's why your power will never be taken from you again. Every sleepless night, every anxious breath, every time you said, I'm fine, when you weren't, it all counts. Use it. Don't just get through it, grow through it. Don't carry the pain, convert it, let it sharpen your focus. Let it deepen your compassion. Let it raise your standards, because pain doesn't come to stay. It comes to shape. And if you let it, it will carve out a version of you that fear can't handle and failure can't hold them. There's someone out there who tried to silence your fire. Someone who underestimated your bounce back. Someone who thought if they hurt you enough, you'd stay down. But they didn't know what God was growing inside of you. They didn't know that pain wasn't your prison. It was your preparation. There's something sacred about rising when you were supposed to be ruined. And the only way you do that is by facing the pain, not avoiding it. Stop running from the memory. Stop trying to erase the disappointment. Bring it to the table and let it know you don't own me anymore. Pain teaches you what you can live without and what you must protect at all costs. It gives you clarity. It gives you grit. It gives you the power to walk into a room and say, you have no idea what I've survived, and I'm still rising. The people who hurt you don't deserve your energy, but they unintentionally gave you something valuable, a reason to rise higher. See, you don't get diamonds without pressure. You don't get oil without crushing. And you don't get real, unshakable power without walking through some fire. Stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start declaring, watch what I do with this. You've got the right to be angry, but you've got a responsibility to heal. You owe it to yourself to become so whole that the version of you who was wounded can barely recognize what you've become. Let them doubt you. Let them leave. Let them go. You're moving into purpose. Because power isn't about being louder than your pain. It's about being wiser because of it. Every moment they counted you out, every whisper behind your back, every door that closed, you are now the key to something greater. Turning pain into power doesn't happen overnight. It happens one moment at a time. It happens when you choose growth over bitterness, when you choose faith over fear, when you choose to rise instead of retreat. That pain you're feeling, it's not random. It's a signal, a calling, a sacred pull from God telling you there's more inside of you than what they tried to destroy. You've got to get up. Not because they're watching, but because you matter. And because the next version of you, the stronger, wiser, more grounded you, is waiting on the other side of this struggle. Speak to your reflection like it's royalty. Remind yourself that you've already overcome more than most people even know. This pain may have shaken your voice, but it didn't silence your soul. It lit a fire under your purpose. Now step forward. With every bruise, with every scar, with every tear, you've earned your strength. Life will never ask your permission to bring storms your way. People will talk about you behind closed doors. They'll twist your words, question your heart, test your patience, and sometimes walk away without ever offering the closure you deserve. But here's the truth. While you can't control the chaos, you can always control your composure. You may not get to pick the fire, but you do get to decide how you walk through it. Reactions are where your real power lives. That moment right after someone disrespects you, right there. That's your battlefield, not the insult, not the betrayal, not the loss. The battle is in the reaction. Do you let it sink you? Or do you stand tall and show that nothing outside of you can shake the strength within you? Life doesn't break you with the problem. It breaks you with how you respond to the problem. That's where mastery begins. There will be times when your peace will be put on trial. Your pride will scream for revenge. Your ego will beg you to respond, to clap back, to prove your point, to let them feel the sting of your silence, or worse, your rage. But if you lose yourself just to win the argument, you've already lost the war. Real strength is restraint. Real power is peace in the middle of the provocation. You don't need to meet chaos with more chaos. Let your calm be louder than their noise. That person who's trying to trigger you, they don't want your wisdom, they want your weakness. Don't give it to them. You have to rise above the nonsense. Be deliberate in your delay. Breathe before you speak. Think before you reply. Sometimes the best response is not a response at all. Not because you're scared, but because you've already outgrown the level they're trying to pull you into. The truth is, people aren't always attacking you. They're projecting their pain, their bitterness, their disappointment, their unhealed wounds. They spill it onto you because they haven't learned how to manage their own reactions. Hurt people, yes, but healed people know when to walk away. You're not required to absorb the energy someone else is radiating. Just because they throw the fire doesn't mean you have to catch it. When someone slams a door in your face, don't kick it down just to scream. Keep walking. Your reaction determines your direction. You could waste hours defending yourself, or you could invest those same hours building yourself. Which one leads to peace? Which one leads to purpose? You were never meant to fight every battle. Some were meant to teach you that silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. And maturity is knowing when your peace is more important than your pride. When you control your reaction, you protect your future. One careless moment, one angry word, one impulsive action can cost you relationships, opportunities, even your reputation. Not because you're a bad person, but because you gave someone temporary power over your permanent character. Never give someone that much control over your spirit. They may have provoked the moment, but you decide what lives in your heart. And hear me on this. People remember your reaction more than they remember what caused it. Don't let a moment of emotion define a lifetime of integrity. Be unshakable. Be unbothered. Not because you're cold, but because you've worked too hard to lose your peace over something small. The ones who bait you into reacting, they know your worth, even if they pretend not to. That's why they try to rattle you. So don't play into their hands. Let your discipline be the wall they can't climb. Discipline starts with decision. Every time you choose peace over petty, calm over chaos, growth over gossip, you build a foundation that nothing can shake. But it starts within. Stop expecting people to hand you peace. Peace is not found, it's chosen. It's not out there, it's in here. And the more you train yourself to pause, to breathe, to think through what's really worth your energy, the more powerful you become. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. You realize not everything deserves your words, your emotions, or your time. Some things aren't worth a text back. Some conversations are just noise in disguise. You learn to distinguish what matters from what distracts. And that is where your legacy is born, in the quiet decision to walk in grace when rage would have been justified. Control doesn't mean you're fake. It means you've learned that peace is a full-time job and you're clocked in. You don't have to react the way they expect you to. Let your growth confuse them. Let your calm make them question their own chaos. When they expect a storm, show up with the sun. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And it's not for them, it's for you. Because every time you hold your peace, you hold your power. Every time you decide not to react from emotion, you invest in your future self. This is how you break the cycle. This is how you stop the generational patterns of shouting, blaming, snapping, and regretting. You become the one who shifts the energy. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer. You set the tone, you lead the space. And in that space, people either rise to meet your calm or leave because they can't handle your discipline. Either way, you win. Either way, your peace is protected. And that's the real prize. Not being right, but being grounded. When someone breaks your heart, betrays your trust, or wounds your spirit, the first instinct isn't peace, it's payback. The pain screams for justice. Your soul cries out for balance. You want them to feel what they made you feel, to know the weight they left on your chest. But here's the thing, revenge might feel good in the moment, but it poisons the one who serves it. When you chase revenge, you become tied to the very hurt you're trying to heal from. You start reliving the offense instead of releasing it. You become trapped in a loop of pain, replaying what they did, imagining how to respond, wasting precious energy on someone who no longer deserves your focus. The real strength isn't in striking back. It's in stepping back. It's in choosing to understand, not excuse, but understand what made them do what they did so you can finally let it go. Understanding doesn't mean justifying someone's actions. It means freeing yourself from the weight of confusion and chaos. It's about recognizing that people act from their own wounds, their own limitations, their own history. Hurt people hurt people. That's not a cliche, it's a cycle. And the only way to break that cycle is to stop mirroring the same energy that broke you. When you seek understanding, you open a door to wisdom. You begin to see the patterns. You recognize the signs. You realize that what someone did to you was more about them than it was about you. Maybe they didn't have the emotional tools. Maybe they were reacting from fear. Maybe they simply weren't capable of giving you what you deserve. And though that doesn't make it okay, it makes it clear. It gives you perspective. It gives you peace. Because sometimes the closure you need doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from comprehension. Revenge is loud, but understanding is deep. When you react from revenge, you operate from your pain. When you respond with understanding, you operate from your power. Ask yourself, what's the long game? Do I want to stay stuck in the past trying to make someone pay? Or do I want to rise, evolve, and grow into someone who no longer needs their apology to be at peace? You were not put on this earth to balance karma for others. Life takes care of what you can't see. Trust that. The universe has a way of circling back what people send out. You don't need to be their lesson. You need to be your own healer. And healing doesn't come from hurting others. It comes from understanding that your value isn't determined by someone else's inability to love you right. Seek the wisdom in the pain. Seek the reason behind the chaos. That's where the transformation lives. There are people walking this world with smiles on their faces and war in their hearts. And sometimes those are the very people who cross your path. They enter your life with charm and exit with wreckage. But even that has a purpose. Even that has a lesson buried inside. When you seek understanding, you start to ask better questions. Not, why did they hurt me, but what was I meant to learn? Not, how can I make them suffer, but how can I grow from this? That shift changes everything. It moves you from victim to victor. It rewrites the narrative. It gives your pain a purpose. That doesn't mean you tolerate abuse. That doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you choose growth over grudges. It means you value peace more than performance. It means you're more committed to becoming better than you are to getting even. One of the hardest things you'll ever do is sit with pain and not hand it back to the one who caused it. But that's where the maturity is born. That's where the greatness rises, because revenge is reactive, but understanding is intentional. When you take time to understand, you reclaim control. You begin to see where your boundaries were too loose, where your intuition was ignored, where your love was given to someone who hadn't earned it. And that self-awareness, that's your power. That's your next level. Because now you're not just walking away bitter, you're walking away better. You're walking away wiser. You're walking away with the clarity to never let that kind of pain plant roots in your soul again. Understanding allows you to close the chapter, not with anger, but with acceptance. And that acceptance doesn't mean defeat. It means you won. You outgrew what once overcame you. People often think forgiveness is weakness, but it takes far more strength to rise above than it does to stoop down and strike back. That's the real flex, to feel the full weight of what someone did to you and still choose to carry yourself with grace. You don't need to slam doors, expose secrets, or match their disrespect. Let your elevation be your explanation. Let your progress be your protest. You don't need revenge when your life starts reflecting peace. Let that speak. Understanding brings closure. No apology ever could. It's you standing in front of the mirror and saying, I choose me now. I choose healing. I choose peace. I choose freedom from the weight of what they did. That's not just survival. That's transformation. You stop being the person who wronged and you become the person who rose. And that rise is the quiet revolution that changes everything. There comes a moment when you realize peace isn't something you find, it's something you create. And the foundation of that peace is boundaries. Not walls to keep the world out, but doors to protect what matters within. Setting boundaries isn't about being cold or unkind. It's about honoring your worth. It's about teaching people how to treat you, not through anger, not through silence, but through clarity. When you stop overextending yourself for people who would never do the same, you reclaim pieces of yourself. You stop showing up empty just to fill everyone else. You stop explaining your value and start living it. But here's the key. Do it without bitterness. Don't let pain harden you. You can be firm and still be kind. You can walk away and still wish someone well. Your boundaries are not a punishment. They're protect. And people who truly love you will respect the lines you draw. Boundaries are not about shutting people down. They're about showing up whole. They say, this is how I need to be loved, respected, and valued. And when someone ignores or crosses them, you don't need to yell, you just need to be consistent. That's power. You don't have to match someone's disrespect to prove your strength. Let your silence say what words never could. Let your absence teach what your presence tolerated for too long. But do it without hate, because bitterness keeps you chained to what hurt you. And freedom doesn't come from revenge. It comes from release. Set your boundaries with love, but stand on them like stone. You can be compassionate and still say no more. You can care and still choose distance. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you owe people endless access to your time, your energy, your heart. You owe yourself the peace that comes with protecting your soul. Some people will call your boundaries selfish because they benefited from your lack of them. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. You don't need to convince anyone of your truth. The people meant for you will honor your limits without question. They'll respect the space you need without taking offense. But others, they'll test you. They'll push. They'll act like you've changed because you have. You've stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't give you a bandage. You've stopped lighting yourself on fire just to keep them warm. And that shift makes people uncomfortable. But stay the course. Just make sure your heart stays soft. Don't let boundaries turn you bitter. Let them make you better. Let them make you more grounded, more intentional, more protective of the peace you fought so hard to find. You don't need to apologize for growing, for healing, or for choosing yourself in a world that often tells you not to. Bitterness will disguise itself as protection. It will tell you to keep people out because you're tired of being let down. But that's not healing, that's hiding. Healthy boundaries come from a place of love, not fear. They say, I've learned from my pain, but I won't live in it. And that's the difference. You're not shutting people out. You're choosing who gets access and how. That's wisdom, that's self-respect. You can be healed and still guarded. You can be open and still cautious. What you've been through has shaped you, but it doesn't have to scar you. The goal is not to build a fortress, but to plant a garden. And not everyone deserves a key to your gate. So tend to your space, nurture your peace. And remember, the right people will never need to be forced to stay inside your boundaries. They'll honor them because they honor you. There will be people who take your boundaries personally, who think your no is rejection, who confuse your silence with malice. That's not your burden. You are not responsible for how others react to your healing. You're responsible for the energy you allow into your life. You're allowed to change the rules of access. You're allowed to pause, to disconnect, to preserve your joy. Don't let guilt trick you into betraying yourself again. You spent enough time shrinking, pleasing, bending until you broke. Now it's time to stand, but not in anger, in awareness. You now know what drains you. You now know what uplifts you. And with that knowledge comes power. The power to protect your time, your space, your spirit. Don't use that power to build bitterness. Use it to build boundaries that restore your peace, renew your joy, and remind you of just how valuable your presence truly is. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people closest to us, the ones we love, the ones who raised us, the ones we share history with. But love without boundaries turns into resentment. And when you constantly abandon yourself to make others comfortable, you teach them that your discomfort is the price of their happiness. That's not love. That's self-neglect. Real love says, I can love you and still say no. I can love you and still need space. I can love you and not sacrifice myself in the process. That's what healthy boundaries look like. They don't push love away. They create the space for it to thrive without control or guilt. So let go of the fear that you're being too much. Let go of the idea that loving people means tolerating anything. You're allowed to draw a line, even with people who mean the world to you, especially with them. You don't need bitterness to set boundaries. You need clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from knowing who you are, what you need, and what you refuse to tolerate moving forward. Bitterness says, I'll never trust again. But clarity says, I'll trust wisely with intention. Bitterness builds walls to hide behind. Clarity builds doors that you can open and close as needed. That's the difference. And when you walk in clarity, you stop waiting for people to respect your worth. You start requiring it. You no longer beg for loyalty, for effort, for consistency. You embody it. And in doing so, you raise the standard not just for others, but for yourself. So if someone leaves because of your boundaries, let them go. You're not losing love. You're making room for the kind that sees you, honors you, and doesn't ask you to shrink to be accepted. That's what setting boundaries without bitterness is all about. Letting go is one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do, especially when your heart is still holding on to the why it happened, why they changed, why it ended the way it did. You carry the weight of unanswered questions, the sting of promises that never became reality. But letting go isn't about pretending the pain didn't exist. It's about not letting that pain define your future. It's about choosing freedom over fixation. And in that release, you don't forget what happened. You remember differently. You carry the lesson, not the wound. You grow from the experience, not become bitter because of it. Letting go means honoring the part of you that showed up, that loved, that gave, even if it wasn't returned. And it means trusting that your healing matters more than holding on to something or someone who wasn't meant to stay. You move on with wisdom, not resentment. There are moments in life when closure won't come with a conversation. It won't arrive with an apology. It won't knock on your door tied up in a neat explanation. Sometimes closure is you waking up and deciding you deserve peace anyway. You deserve clarity even if they never gave it to you. You deserve healing without their permission. That's what letting go is. It's reclaiming your power from the hands of someone who didn't know how to hold it. It's choosing not to carry what broke you into the next chapter of your life. But you don't walk away empty. You walk away with knowledge. You walk away with sharper instincts, with a stronger voice, with deeper boundaries. The lesson becomes your armor, not your prison. It guides your decisions. It strengthens your spirit. And most importantly, it keeps you from repeating cycles that once disguised themselves as love or loyalty. Letting go doesn't mean the love wasn't real. It doesn't mean the time you gave was wasted. It doesn't mean you were foolish for hoping or giving or believing. It means you've chosen to stop pouring your energy into something that no longer pours back. You can still cherish the good while acknowledging the bad. You can miss the person while understanding they were not meant to go where you're heading. Some chapters are beautiful but incomplete. Some people were meant to teach you something, not stay forever. And that's okay. You didn't fail by walking away. You grew. You evolved. You saw the truth and you acted on it. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's strength. You let go because you finally loved yourself enough to stop holding on to what kept hurting you. And in that release, you didn't lose the memory, but you gained the meaning. That's the real reward of the pain. It's tempting to erase everything when something ends, to forget, to block it out, to deny it ever mattered. But the goal isn't to forget. The goal is to remember without reliving, to reflect without reopening. You owe it to yourself to grow from what happened, not bury it. Because every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment carried a message. And if you silence the memory too soon, you miss the meaning. The lesson isn't always obvious in the moment. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it comes to you in the stillness long after the storm has passed. And when it does, don't run from it. Don't resent it. Receive it. Let it change the way you love. Let it teach you to listen to your intuition. Let it help you identify red flags before they turn into regrets. You don't have to carry the pain, but you can carry the wisdom it gave you. There are people who come into your life like fire, intense, consuming, unforgettable. And when they leave, they burn everything with them. And yet you rise from the ashes, not as who you were before, but as someone forged by the flames. Letting go of them doesn't mean you deny what you felt. It means you no longer let what was rob you of what can be. You stop replaying the moments, reanalyzing the words, questioning your worth based on their choices. You look in the mirror and say, I am more than what they saw. I am not defined by who didn't stay. And in that declaration, you begin again, not from scratch, but from experience. You become more intentional with your love, more discerning with your trust, more anchored in your truth. That's what letting go without losing the lesson looks like. It's a transition from wounded to wise. Sometimes the lesson in letting go is about you, not them. It's about seeing the ways you gave too much, the times you ignored your gut, the moments you tolerated what should have been rejected. And that truth might sting, but it's sacred. Because when you own your part, you reclaim your power. You begin to heal from the inside out. You learn not to abandon yourself just to keep someone else around. You realize that the love you were so willing to give away, without boundaries, without limits, deserves to be returned, not exploited. And you carry that lesson into every future relationship, into every room you enter, into every version of yourself you're becoming. You walk lighter, not because the pain never happened, but because you no longer carry it the same way. You've unpacked the weight and kept only the wisdom. That's how healing works. That's how you turn pain into progression. Letting go with grace is one of the most courageous things you'll ever do. It's easy to hold grudges. It's easy to become cynical. But it takes courage to say, I release you, but I keep the lesson. It takes courage to walk away with compassion, to wish well what once wounded you, to no longer need an apology to move forward. You don't need vengeance to validate your pain. You don't need closure from someone else when you've found clarity within yourself. That's real freedom. That's peace that can't be taken. Because when you've learned the lesson, you don't need to repeat the class. You stop chasing answers from the past and start creating purpose in the present. And that shift, that's where your power lives. In the space between letting go and growing up. In the decision to rise with wisdom, not resentment. In the choice to never shrink again for love. There comes a point where your strength runs out, your plans fall apart, and your voice gets tired of praying for the same thing over and over again. It's in that place where everything feels too heavy to carry that you finally learn what surrender really means. Not giving up, not losing hope, but stepping back and saying, God, I've done all I can. Now I trust you to do what I can't. That kind of surrender isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing the difference between what's in your hands and what's in his. You're not meant to control it all, fix it all, carry it all. Some battles aren't won with force. They're won with faith. Faith that even in the silence, God is moving. Even in the waiting, he's working. Letting God handle what you can't is not abandonment. It's alignment. It's letting go of fear and making room for divine intervention. Sometimes we keep fighting battles that were never ours to fight in the first place. We argue, we stress, we lose sleep trying to change people, fix situations, and force outcomes that God never asked us to control. And in doing so, we wear ourselves down. But God never needed your help to be God. He just needed your trust. You don't have to have it all figured out to take the next step. You just need to know who's guiding you. Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about walking forward even when the path makes no sense. Because if you could see everything coming, it wouldn't be faith, it would be sight. Letting go means saying, God, I trust that your plan is better than my pressure. Your pace is better than my panic. You breathe again when you finally release what was never meant to be your burden in the first place. We think control brings peace, but often it's the very thing that steals it. We hold on tight to situations because we're afraid of what might happen if we let go. But peace doesn't come from controlling every detail. It comes from trusting the one who sees the whole picture. God's hands are stronger than your fear. His perspective is wider than your pain. He sees what you don't. He knows what you can't. And when you hand it over to him, you don't lose control. You gain calm. You get your joy back. Your sleep returns. Your mind stops running circles around problems you were never meant to solve alone. Surrender is not quitting, it's partnering. It's you saying, I've done all I know to do. Now, God, I trust you to do what only you can do. That kind of surrender brings a peace that human effort never could. There will be days when you don't feel strong enough to keep going, when the weight is too much and you wonder if God is even listening. But faith isn't about feelings, it's about trust. Even when your emotions fail you, your faith can still carry you. God isn't asking for perfection, he's asking for permission. Permission to step into your chaos and bring order. Permission to replace your anxiety with assurance, but he won't force his way in. You've got to let go of your grip. You've got to release control. Because as long as you're holding the steering wheel, he'll let you drive. And you'll keep crashing into disappointment. But the moment you step aside and say, lead me, guide me, take this from me, he shows up in ways you never expected. Letting God handle what you can't is choosing to believe that he's faithful even when life isn't fair. It's easy to trust God when life makes sense, when the bills are paid, the relationships are strong, the plans are unfolding smoothly. But real faith is forged in the fire. It's built in the struggle. It's tested in the silence. That's where you discover the depth of your belief. Can you still trust when doors close? Can you still believe when prayers feel unanswered? Can you still say, God is good when everything around you says otherwise? Letting God handle what you can is not passive, it's powerful. It's active faith that says, even now I believe, not because you see a way, but because you know the way maker. You don't have to feel brave to be faithful. You just have to keep showing up, keep praying, keep trusting. And in time, you'll see how God turned the things that tried to break you into the very things that built you. People will tell you to hustle harder, grind more, push through. But sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to kneel, not in defeat, but in divine surrender. There's a strength in stillness. There's a breakthrough in bowing down and saying, God, I give this to you. Because when you get out of the way, you give heaven room to move. You create space for miracles. You stop striving and start receiving. Life isn't always about doing more. It's about trusting deeper. That business you're trying to grow, that relationship you're trying to fix, that pain you're trying to numb. Maybe it's time to say, God, I trust your hand over my hustle. That doesn't mean you stop working. It means you stop worrying. You still plant the seeds, but you trust him to bring the rain. You still build, but you trust him to bring the right people. That's surrender with strategy. When you try to control everything, you end up carrying things that were never meant for you. Emotional weights, expectations, fear of failure, guilt from the past, anxiety about tomorrow, and all of it crushes your spirit. But God never created you to live under that pressure. He said, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That's not just a verse, it's a promise. It means you're not alone in the chaos. You're not forgotten in the mess. You're covered. You're seen. But only if you let go. Only if you say, God, I can. But I know you can. And that's where the healing begins. Not when you fix it, but when you hand it over. When you give up trying to be your own savior. That's when peace walks in. That's when chains break. That's when God steps in and shows you why surrender was the strongest thing you could have done. What you've been through wasn't just about you. That heartbreak, that betrayal, that moment when everything fell apart, it wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of your assignment. You didn't walk through that fire to come out empty. You came out with a testimony. You came out with something someone else needs. Your pain has a purpose. Somebody out there is drowning in the same storm you survived. They don't need a hero, they need a light. They need someone who's been there, someone who understands without judgment. When you speak from experience, you speak with authority. Your wounds carry wisdom. Your scars speak louder than your words. Don't waste the experience by keeping it to yourself. Share the lesson. Lend your strength. Let your story become a ladder that others can climb. The same way you needed someone once, now it's your turn to be that someone. There's someone who doesn't believe they'll make it through what you already overcame. They're ready to quit. They're questioning their worth. And your voice, your truth, might be the very lifeline they need. You don't need a stage to make a difference. You don't need a spotlight. All you need is the courage to show up with your story. To say, I've been through some things, but I'm still standing. That simple honesty breaks chains. It reminds people they're not alone. That pain they're feeling, it's real, but so is healing, so is hope. You don't have to be perfect to inspire someone. You just have to be real. When you speak from your struggle, you give others permission to embrace theirs. You become a mirror showing them what's possible. That's the power of lived experience. You take the thing that once made you feel powerless and you use it to uplift someone else. People don't always need advice. Sometimes they just need your presence. They need to know you made it out, that you felt what they're feeling, that you cried the same tears, fought the same battles, doubted the same way, but you kept going. Your story becomes their survival guide, not because you fixed everything, but because you found strength in the struggle. When you open up about your journey, you make space for others to begin theirs. Your vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a bridge, a connection, an invitation to hope. And when you elevate others through your experience, you elevate yourself too. You give your pain meaning. You give your past purpose. That's the kind of impact that outlives you. Not just success, but significance. Because when you use what hurt you to heal others, you become more than a survivor. You become a servant. And that's a legacy worth leaving behind. Every time you tell your story, you take power away from the thing that tried to destroy you. You strip shame of its grip. You silence the lie that says you're alone, because someone out there is walking through a storm thinking nobody understands, but you do. You've walked that path. You've carried that pain, and now you can light the way, not with perfection, but with authenticity. When you use your experience to elevate others, you speak life into broken places. You breathe hope into tired hearts. And it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes it's a conversation, a text, a moment of compassion, but it matters. It counts. You never know how your survival will become someone else's breakthrough. What once made you weak can now make someone else rise. That's the gift of pain transformed. That's the power of purpose found in the rubble. Don't minimize what you've overcome. Don't downplay what you've endured. Because every setback, every scar, every sleepless night gave you something someone else is praying for. Perspective, strength, endurance. And when you share it, you shift the atmosphere. You become a vessel for something bigger than yourself. The goal was never just to survive. It was to thrive and then reach back. To look someone in the eye and say, I see you because I was you. That kind of empathy is rare. That kind of power is unmatched. You become a mentor without the title. A light without the spotlight. And you don't have to have it all together. You just have to show up with your truth. Your story is sacred. Don't bury it. Don't be ashamed of it. Use it. Because somebody's healing, somebody's comeback, somebody's decision not to give up might be hidden in the story you've been afraid to tell. There's something sacred about sharing from your scars instead of your wounds. It means you've done the work. You've processed the pain, and now you're offering the lesson, not the bleeding. When you use your experience to elevate others, you become a steward of wisdom, you become a guide, not a guru, a helper, not a hero. And that humility resonates. People don't need a perfect example, they need a real one. They need someone who's still healing, still growing, still learning, but bold enough to lead anyway. That's what your journey equips you for. Ministry in the mess. Purpose in the pain. And when you start showing up like that, everything shifts. You no longer see your past as a prison, you see it as preparation. You no longer feel disqualified, you feel destined, because now you know what tried to break you actually built you to bless others. That's divine strategy. Using your experience to elevate others isn't about reliving your trauma, it's about redeeming it. It's about showing that your story doesn't end at the lowest point. It keeps going, it rises. And as it rises, it lifts others too. That's the kind of love that heals. That's the kind of light that can't be dimmed. You never know who's watching you, silently praying for proof that it gets better. Let your life be that. Let your growth be the evidence. And remember, you don't have to be on a platform to be powerful. You just have to be willing. Willing to speak. Willing to show up. Willing to be used by something bigger than yourself. Because when your story touches another soul, it multiplies. And the pain you once carried alone becomes the reason someone else can walk free. That's impact. That's legacy. That's purpose being fulfilled through you. So if you've ever wondered why you had to go through what you did, why the pain came, why the betrayal hurt so deep, why you were left alone in that dark place, it wasn't just to break you. It was to build you into a voice for the voiceless. It was to birth in you a strength this world can't steal and a compassion this world desperately needs. You are not just a survivor. You are a light bearer, a healer, a walking testimony that grace is real, that redemption is possible, and that broken things can still shine. Don't hide your scars. They're proof that you made it, and they are someone else's roadmap home. Keep showing up. Keep speaking life. Keep lifting others with what once tried to bury you. You are needed. You are chosen. And your voice, your truth, matters more than you know. God bless you. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more powerful, life-changing